Hello, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Genealogy Quick Start. I'm Shamel Jordan. I am your host. Guess what? We have two new quick starts for you today, and I am very excited to tell you about them and our special guests. First up, I keep running into this myself. Like, I don't think any of us have not run into this. You found a record, but is it your person? So Jim and Michael have some tips on how do you know if it's your person. Also, this is one that never gets old, haha, deciphering old handwriting. And I think pretty soon, like all cursive will be just old handwriting because so many people struggle with it and a lot of people weren't taught it. Like I think there'll be some gaps in it. Guess what? Everyone who was so upset about school children learning cursive, guess what? I was in a classroom and I saw those three lines, the solid line and the dotted line and the solid line. And I saw some curly connected letters. So, yeah, they are teaching cursive again, which is actually pretty awesome. So, our special guest today is Pam Vestal, and she created Generations Genealogy. And I ran into her. She did this incredible presentation on deciphering old handwriting. So I really look forward to learning some tips from her. I've been hanging out in records from the 1700s. So hopefully we will I will learn something that I can apply. So thank you so much for you, those of you who are here. You know what to do. Let us know where you are. Let us know your genealogy group so we can share with others because genealogy groups are the lifeblood of genealogy. If you're not a member of a genealogy group, you are missing out on so many ways that you can enhance your research. So you can either join a genealogy group near where you live. You can join a genealogy group where your ancestors lived because guess Zoom is so available now. So definitely put in the comments your genealogy groups and where you are. We love to know where you are. Jim and Michael especially love to know where you are. So let me bring out the number one quick starters in the United States of America. First up, editor and columnist, James M. Beidler. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I am fine, but just for reference, who are the number two quick starters?
Whoever our special guest is. Next up is genealogy tip of the day, Michael John Neill. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine.
So I'm sure, you are veterans of research. I'm sure that you've had some things happen with deciphering old handwriting.
Well, okay, this is not a research thing, but a memory kernel that came back to me from somewhere between third and fifth grade. And handwriting was one of my weaknesses. Got A's in most things. And I think I'm getting a C in cursive. And I go to the teacher because I had seen this other classmate of mine, and I'm like, well, look at this guy. His name was Michael Gutierrez. We called him Goody. I'm like,
Goody,
well,
yo
look at Goody's
goody.
handwriting. Yeah, because he had gotten a B and I had gotten a C. Well, this teacher, instead of like, oh, you're right, I'm gonna put your grade up, she lowered him to a C. I don't I don't I don't think the guy ever forgave me for that, and I don't blame him.
That's hysterical. Michael.
That's a lesson. That's a lesson to be learned there. Um, I
Yeah. I
well,
mean, I didn't really mean to do that to the guy, but
That's your teacher. I don't That's the teacher's fault. You don't absorb any of that. That's the teacher's fault. Michael, did you lower any of your classmates' grades?
No, I didn't. But years ago, the teacher had lost his answer key, and he wanted to use my test when he went over the test with the class. And I kind of had the similar problem Jim did. If I'd known what was going to happen, I wouldn't have let him do it, because when he was using my test as the answer key, he realized he'd made an error in grading my test, and my score went down by 5 points. So
You lowered your
when
own test.
he said, oh, that I didn't realize you missed that problem. It was 5 points off, and I was kind of irritated. Um, but living.
Destructive.
The world did not.
Self-destructive.
The world did not end. I learned that too. If you want a handwriting example, really quickly,
Yes.
I could think of one where they didn't realize what they thought was just an extra bump at the end of the name was actually a letter A, and they had made Johanna Johann because they didn't see that A.
Oh.
It was a real sloppy A. But in that case, the A made a big difference because it changed Johanna into Johann.
Huge. You gave me another one I loved. Why are you keeping
I
it?
can give you that one. The guy signed a marriage bond in Kentucky in the 1830s. His first name was Richard, and he had a very labored script, but his name was Richard, and his one letter looked like a T in front of the CH. The I was kind of funny, and the R looked like a B. I'll let you all do the math on that and see what pans out. But it looked like he signed something else instead of Rich or
a female dog, kind of.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So
a female dog.
That's why transcription is not just a science; it's also a little bit of an art too, as you'll probably find out in that section.
Most definitely, and you know Pam is going to teach us that art in our 30 minutes. We're going to come out experts, right? I'm sure. No, we're going to be a lot better than we were before we started. I guarantee you. But hey, we're talking about same names with you guys. So you found a record, but is it your person? So you have the secret to this, how to figure this out? All right. Well, you guys look like you have your game faces.
We have some ideas. We have some ideas.
Okay.
There's no guarantees. No guarantees.
Cool. All right. So are you ready? All right. Let's go ahead and get started with you found a record. But is it your person? But yeah, wait a minute. There's two people who said hello. I am so sorry. Valerie Ann Lutz is here. Hello, Valerie Ann. Valerie, I have been singing Amy Winehouse song, Valerie, all day. So if you like Amy Winehouse, put it on, from the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania, and Anita Payne from TNGS, AAGS in Cleveland and Fayette County, Tennessee. You are a genealogy junkie, Anita. Thanks for sharing. So let's go ahead and get started with our quick start. You found a record, but is it your person? So step one is I thought I fixed that. What does this record say about the person in it?
Well, you've got to get beyond the name, and you want to look at every identifying detail, not just the ones that are obvious and blatant in your face, but any that are between the lines, so to speak. Where, that they have to be of a certain age to be in that document. Is that unstated? Are there any cultural clues, social clues, whatever those details are? You want to make sure you read all of that. You also want to read all the legal verbiage, because there may be some clues buried in that. You don't want to skim over that, thinking it's mumbo jumbo. There could be some additional things in there that you can use to help distinguish and make sure whether it's your person or not.
Or not. All right. Step two is, could there be more than one person in that place and time?
And the default on this is, yes, there could be.
No.
And distressingly, a lot of times there definitely are. Even when you think that the name is Bernhard Schmuckenmeister. And yeah, in the same township in Pennsylvania, there turn out to be two Bernhard Schmuckermeisters.
It's crazy when that happens. You're like, no one's going to have this name. And not only do
Yeah.
they have the
And
name, they're like the same age frame.
Because they're
yeah.
they're first cousins named for their grandfather, who was Bernhard Schmuckermeister the first, or whatever the case may be, and they're in the same place, because they're in that same kin network. So that's why it's important you figure that out and are really aware of that. Don't assume, oh, it's a rural area. There couldn't, and even names that aren't as common that can be a problem. So in urban areas, we always stress that there could be more than one of that name, but just like Jim said, in rural areas, it's more likely a relative potentially. But it's still a problem.
There's some.
Separate them out.
Yeah, there's somewhat of a famous or infamous, if you want to call it, case in Western Berks County. I mean, this is early, like 1740s. And there are so many Nicholas Schaeffers. Now, Schaeffer's a common German name.
Yeah.
Well, there was a Nicholas Schaeffer among the early 1720s immigrants. He had, I think it was 6 sons. Every darn one of them named a grandson after Nicholas Schaeffer. And then they're in a court case over who owns the Lutheran church in this area. And it's like, well, I'm Nicholas Schaeffer, son of Frederick. I mean, thankfully, the court case gives you a lot of good documentation.
Yeah,
I have one of these Nicholas Schaeffers as a 6th great grandfather. I have no freaking clue which one it is, but
you're buried in Schaeffers.
You can get
buried in
Schaeffers.
Exactly.
So, okay, so could there be, and the answer is yes. So that was facetious. Step 3 is to summarize what you know about the target person. So this is your ancestor that you know is your person, that you've traced back from you. You have great evidence from you to that person. So how do you summarize it? What do you guys do, tactically?
One quick thing is to make a chronology that gets all the dates and then think about the geography of it, the exact places where they lived, other identifying factors, name of spouse, name of children, maybe occupation. The problem is if they're rural, they were all farmers, so you can't always use that. And of course, they all married some woman named Mary or whatever the case may be. But if there are some distinguishing things besides the chronology, you've got to utilize those. Sometimes an appearance on a tax list can help give you an idea of which one of the 15 men with the same name is older.
That'll help.
You've got to look for everything, unfortunately.
Yeah, every little detail and parse all those details for sure.
Parse, I love that word. All right, step 4 is to check for consistency between the two. So you mean like they have the same birth year, they have the same grandfather?
Right. So if you've got a new document that you think maybe is your person, and we'll see this in one of the examples. You've got a new document that you think is your person. I suggest take that document, see what you can get out of it. Don't look at anything else. Compare that to what you know about your person, and then look. You're not always going to get 100% consistency, but there should be. If you think it's your person, they should be reasonably consistent.
They don't all of a sudden start signing their name differently. They don't all of a sudden, show up with 4 kids when they only had 1 or something like that.
Or go from X to an actual signature.
Right. All right. Step 5 is to document your findings. So let's take a look at your slides. And how do you guys the 2 Peter Smiths, how do you finalize that after you've done all this work? What do you do with that?
You write it up in as much detail as you can. Take your chronologies, compare those, your other things you determined about your guy and the guy in the new record, and then make your argument for why you think you've got the same person in those two records.
Yeah, this is my Peter Dobb case. I actually am the descendant from 3 Peter Dobbs in a row. And the 2 that I list here, the one at the top, Peter born circa 1770, and then Peter born 1800, I do not have black letter proof that they are father and son. I would make book on it. I would pay somebody's lottery ticket on it. And I've loads of proof negatives on it. But this is what kind of got me into eventually doing a book on the Dobb family in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, because they appear to be connected. One of the things that kind of makes it even more complicated is both of these men named Peter Dobb marry women named Magdalena. So in this one particular church's baptismal records,
There they are.
you have 40 years worth of baptisms to a Peter Dobb and Magdalena. And one of the things there was one child that was kind of, could it be, from the elder Peter Dobb or the younger Peter Dobb? It turned out that Peter Dobb was, let's just say, conceived in the process of wedlock. I guess that's the best way.
Oh, gotcha. You're so cool.
Yeah. So at first, and at first, I was trying to attribute it to the older Peter Dobb, but then once I really, did all the math and everything, it made more sense. That was the younger Peter and Magdalena.
Didn't jump to any conclusions. You looked at what you had on paper as opposed to, I love that.
This one took some time. Yeah.
Okay, this is my example. It's a little bit different from Jim's example. What I wanted to do here was there's 2 documents in this man's naturalization process: his declaration, which you see here, and then the naturalization a few years later. And the problem is these documents don't say very much about Bernard. It's got a date. He's indicating here he's intending to become a citizen, allegiance to the King of Hanover, and he signs it, and that's it. And it's typical for naturalization documents of this era. There's not a lot of information on it. If we go to the next slide is even more informative. It's very small. This is his naturalization, but it's in there, which we'll see in the next slide, the details in a little bigger format, that he's been in the United States for, I think, 5 years at this point in time. He's saying he's declared his intent at least 2 years before, and he's lived in Illinois for at least 1 year. And so what I did, because I had a Bernard Dirks that I thought was this guy, but there's not a lot of detail in this. And so I wanted to make certain of 2 things. One, there wasn't another Bernard Dirks in this county.
Right.
So I went through in Illinois, we have an 1855 census. I went through that one. I looked at 1860, 1870. There's only one, and I did a broad search, a wild card search for men with the name starting BE star, D star, living in that county. And there was only one man that fit those parameters in those census records. The Bernard Dirks that I knew was mine, because he was in the right place, had the right wife, and all that stuff. And so I knew that there was not another Bernard Dirks hanging around. And you always want to, keep that possibility in mind, as we discussed earlier. So then I made a chronology, which should be the next
slide. Let's see.
I took the naturalization and the declaration of intent. There we go. And based on what was, and there wasn't a lot in those, but it did say how long he'd been in the U.S. at least, how long at least he made his declaration, and then when he lived in the state. So I used that chronology based on the naturalization documents to see, was that consistent with what I knew about my Bernard. And it turns out it was.
It's
Because
consistent.
it's not 100% proof it's him, because there could have been another Bernard, but based on the census, there wasn't one. So it would have had to have been some Bernard coming from out of the county, doing these things and leaving, which the chance of that is pretty slim. So based on that, that's my Bernard. Now, for me, that was helpful because this is the only document where I have Bernard's signature. All the other records on him, the land deeds, all the stuff in his probate, it's record copies of things, or things which are the clerk's rendition of his signature, or nothing he signed. So for me, it was cool not only to get when he naturalized, but to get his signature, because that's the only document where I've got that. But the chronology of what the thing said, combined with there's no other guys in the area with that name,
No other guys,
and then I compared that to what I knew about my person.
No, I love that, how you went all out on making sure there wasn't another Bernard Dirks. Like, I don't know that I would have done that. Like, I don't
because you've got to kind of do that, because my thought is, we mentioned before, there's always a possibility there's more than one, and especially he's settled in a German community. This is a fairly German name. First name is not that unusual. Last name is not that unusual either in the ethnicity where he's from. So there easily could have been one.
For me, I feel like we are alerted to another one, especially in the same place in the same time when we're doing a census research. Would you agree that census records are probably the best way to kind of nail down that same person in the same place?
Census records, and if the time period is appropriate, personal and property tax records could get you those off census units.
Yeah, I was going to say pre-1850 tax records.
Right.
Yeah.
And after that, I would look in newspapers. Probably got to get a little bit later in the 19th century before newspapers catch a significant proportion of people. They're not going to catch them in the time period that we're talking here. He wasn't well off enough. He's going to make the local newspaper in the 1850s. If it's 50 years later, then there's a reasonable chance you should look and see, are all those references to that man in that newspaper really the same person, or could there be another dude or dudette with that same name?
Oh yeah, sometimes it looks like, oh, they're like the most magnificent person in the world. Look at all the stuff they're doing, but it's really, you're combining the lives of two people with the same name. Was that what you were just saying? That's kind of
right.
That can happen. All right, let's see what you have here, Michael.
So this was just kind of the summary of some of the things. We already mentioned a few of these things, but city directories would be another one you might want to look at.
City directories are perfect for this kind of work.
Especially for the urban people. You're going to have those every year, every few years. That's a really good way to see if there's those duplicate people, and then learn other. The thing is, if there's a couple of them with the same name, learn about the one that's not yours as well, so you know something about him, enough about him, so when you see another record, you can look at that and more easily say, okay, that's dude number 2 with that name. That's not my dude number 2.
And usually it would be like a spouse, but then there's Magdalena, right?
Exactly. Well, I've got one in my children's ancestry where their ancestor is George A. Freund, and George A. Freund married Catherine with a C. He had a first cousin who was George K. Freund, who married Catherine with a K. Now that was helpful because it helps me to keep them. The thing is, you got to assume they spelled the Catherine's right. But it was nice that George K. married Catherine with a K, because that helps Michael keep them straight. And refer to his paperwork all the time. But that's just like Jim mentioned with the name thing. They were the same. Like the initials were different. And in that case, they were very cognizant of the cousin of each other, and they would always go by George A. or George K.
I love when they do that. The middle initial really helps. And the senior junior can help, but it can really mess you up. Talk about junior and senior. Like a lot of people, we get confused by junior and senior. We automatically assume that that's a father and a son.
Yeah, well, in the modern day context, in the 20th century, it's almost always the case that senior and junior are father and son. But in previous centuries, it was used more in the context of the older and the younger, and that doesn't mean father and son. I have one case in that Dobb family again, where there's a Henry Dobb Sr. and a Henry Dobb Jr. who are father-in-law and son-in-law because it was a cousin marriage.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah, you could easily take a wrong turn, and what corrected me on that was a church burial record where Henry Dobb Jr. is definitively said to be the son of a, you've guessed it, a Peter Dobb. It all comes back to Peter.
It all comes back to Peter Dobb. Very cool. Did you have any other same name funniness? Audience, please, whether you are watching this live or recorded, we'd love to hear some of your same name issues. Michael, you really gave me a great tip for kind of parsing them out because I think that I have some stuff for a same name where, like Jim said, it's not kind of fitting well. So I'm misattributing. I think I'm misattributing records to the wrong person. So I need to go back through that. I did some research for my cousin, and I think I traced her to like to the Christiana riot. It was a famous kind of underground railroad kind of riot, and but there's another guy with the same name, so we got to figure that out. So, Jim, Michael, any final words?
None other than when you got all those people the same name, make sure you've got every document you can possibly find to see what it says, because you never know what might give you that clue to help separate them out. You just don't know until you've read it.
Absolutely.
Personally.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Bye byes. Was that your gang sign, Michael? All right. Give me 1 second to bring Pam's lovely face up. All right. We are ready for our second quick start. Thank you so much for being here. I'm telling you, Pam absolutely blew me away. I just recently met Pam. I think I've been around Pam for years. We just haven't like really talked or anything. But when we got a chance to talk, I said, come on my show. And she said, absolutely. And so here she is from Generations Genealogy, Pam Vestal. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Shamel. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here.
So, Pam, I'm going to ask you the same question we ask all of our special guests to share your genealogy origin story, how you got started, and when you knew you were hooked.
Well, my story is that my daughter wanted to know more about her father's wacky family. And they were a bunch of characters, and we really didn't know anything about the ancestors at all. But we figured they were probably some pretty weird characters as well. So I got on ancestry.com. I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I started finding hints. And among these hints were connections to public family trees. Okay, you probably know what's coming. Well, half of these trees, I mean, there were loads of them. They all had the same information. And half of them were, well, I I started saving the information to my tree because I didn't know any better.
Ah.
They took the families back through half the kings and queens of England, and I was so excited. Look who my children descended from. Look at this illustrious history they had. Some of them took them all the way back to the Bible. Wow. So that was all great until I started taking a closer look, and I discovered there were little issues, little tiny issues. Dead
Mm.
women who were somehow giving birth, which was a little problematic. So after that, I realized that and by that time I was hooked. That was it. I had to find out what the truth was. And so at that point, I realized I had to learn how to do this and, find the actual evidence and, learn to distinguish between things like same name people.
Yes, it's like methodology and processes and hanging out with people. Like genealogy didn't just start with us. There's people who have been doing this forever. So
Mhm.
it's really nice to hang out with people who know what they're doing and go to institutes and go to conferences. So thank you for saying that. And I'm so glad that you didn't just pass that on to your children so that they could pass it on to their children. And someone, 100 years from now says, you know what? I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
So,
I had to
Pam,
grow out a whole tree.
oh,
It was
wow.
heartbreaking, but it was the right thing to do.
It was your integrity. Integrity is important in all areas of life, right, Pam?
Absolutely.
All right. So let's go on and get started with your quick start, which is fairly self-explanatory, which is deciphering old handwriting. Pam, how did you get started in when did you start kind of like specializing in this? Because you give a lot of talks on it.
Yeah. When I first started doing genealogy, I was really intimidated by the old handwriting. And it seemed like everybody in my classes could read it with no problem, except for me. And
Mm.
what I realized over time is they just had a lot more experience. They worked with the old language, but they also had some techniques that were helping them to figure out what the actual chicken scratches were saying. And so that's when I started learning about it.
Love that. I love that. So, are you ready to get started with your
Sure,
quick deciphering old handwriting?
absolutely.
Fantastic. So, let's go ahead and get started here. Step one is to choose a document. Bless you. Are
Thank
there any
you.
documents that are better than others for this exercise?
You know, I think we can struggle with something that was written yesterday, and we can struggle with something written 400 years ago. Um, I do believe that working with difficult handwriting can teach
Okay.
a lot of skills that will apply no matter what you're looking at.
So, getting something messy.
It's something messy
Okay. We're going to
and
be
be
messy
prepared
today.
to be persistent.
I love it. I love it. So we have a document, and then step two would be to scan for context. Can you
That's right.
explain deeper what that means?
Sure. A lot of times, um, documents are organized in a particular way. There will be certain sections that have a list of items. There will be certain sections that will have names. And if we can look at the document as a whole, sometimes we can figure out what's in each section, and that will help us to identify the words.
That makes sense. I love that because when you look at documents, these documents they're almost like templates. Like you said, it's like boilerplate language in some places when
Right.
it's kind of like written out. So you're saying look at it and kind of get to know how the document is set up.
Yeah, because when we're looking at difficult to read language, it's really helpful to have some sense of what kind of words might fit.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. So that was to scan the documents for context. So then step 3, which is here, is to look for a recognizable word. So what can you already tell? Can you already read, right?
Right, exactly. Sometimes, if we're looking at the old handwriting from the 1600s, in fact, from 1400 to about 1750, the dominant form of handwriting was called secretary hand, and it doesn't even look like English. It's
Uh,
really hard to figure out, but there are almost always going to be some words that look very familiar. They look exactly
okay.
the way they look today.
Okay. So
And
look for what you know. Try to give yourself some hand claps. Yay.
exactly. And that can give us a start in figuring out what the individual letters look like.
And do we have an example of this secretary hand when we show the
We
slides?
do.
Fantastic. So that's step 3. So look for what you know. How many can you guess? This is a game. This is a game show. Like how
That's
many
right.
words? You guess? Do it.
That's
Step
absolutely right.
Step 4, I love this. Like I've absolutely never done this, and I'm going to do this when I find a really crazy document. Create an alphabetic guide using the document. So please tell us about this.
Well, if you've ever done a cryptogram and you're trying to decode a code, you figure out one letter that substitutes for another letter. Well, there are and you can really create a guide that tells you, okay, the T isn't really a T, it stands for an S. And then you can fill in all the S's. Well, there are alphabet guides that can help us with old handwriting. The problem is that people wrote just as idiosyncratically in the past as they do today. And so sometimes these pre-printed alphabet guides don't match the document. So what I do is I take this record and I go through it and I try to find these recognizable words and pull out examples of every letter that I can figure out. And just like if you were playing Wheel of Fortune, on TV, you don't have to have every letter to be
Uh,
figure
to
out.
tell what the word is.
Right, right. If you have a 3-letter word and it says TH blank, it's probably the word that. And that way you figure out what the E's look like, and then you can find the E's through the entire document.
I love that. You have an example we're going to show when we show the documents. And so then step 5, after you create your alphabet, is use the context of the document to decipher difficult words.
Right.
All right. Did you want to talk about that, Annie?
We can jump to it, and I think having an example might help.
Okay, when we get there, we'll do that. And I think we don't have a step 6, do you? Yes. Reach out to others for help. You're going to tell us what are some great places to look for help?
Genealogical societies or clubs are among the best places because there are other people who like to do what you like to do. So chances are you're going to ask somebody who's going to think it's fun. And
all of us. What do you mean?
That's
You
right.
document, you say, what is this? All the genealogists will walk towards it, and it's we love this.
We do. I know. It's really true. And sometimes just a fresh pair of eyes are all you need.
And sometimes it's like, duh. Oh my God. I've been staring at this for a week and it says with what?
That's exactly right.
All right, let's look at your great slides.
So this first one is an example of, when you choose a document, the top square shows an example of secretary hand. And as you can see, it's really, really hard to read unless you're familiar with it. This is from 1637. And I never thought I could read anything like this. But in fact, I have no special skills. I'm just stubborn. I mean, persistent. So being strategic about it can really help. And this other document is an example of something from 1775, and it's written in cursive. And yet it's very difficult to read.
It is hard to read. Yeah. It should be.
Any kind of document is a first step, but really have faith that if you work with it enough and if you are patient and go through the steps, you will have success.
Can you watching, can you read any of this secretary? I can see month and I could see that year. Like,
Yeah.
I know I could see that. I think that might say Edward on the second line, first word.
Yes.
But this is real inventory, the first
Mhm.
line. That is really hard. So how is this primarily 1600s? Like by the time we get to the Revolutionary War, we don't have that?
Um, well, a lot of official documents were kept in secretary hand all the way up till 1800, but certainly by 1750, it was considered old-fashioned, and so people,
Okay.
when they were doing their own writing, were adopting this new cursive style, which was called italic hand.
Okay. Oh, wait, so the first one's secretary hand, the top one, and then the next one is italic hand.
Right.
Okay.
So, the next step is to, scan the document for context.
Mhm.
Often we'll have a stack of papers and if we're lucky, we have a stack of documents. And if they're really difficult to read, before we start jumping in and looking at every single letter, trying to figure out what it says, it's helpful to just get an overview, because documents are organized in certain ways, and sometimes knowing the organization or looking for clues can help us. So if you're looking at a probate file and there are all these government pages, and then you come across this, and it's got
Mhm.
the signature of the deceased, then you know it's probably the will.
Mm.
And therefore, you know that the first paragraph is probably going to have a lot of boilerplate language, which you can learn about by looking at other wills, because most of them start basically the same way. And then
Yes.
it's going to have names, because the heirs and names of important people, the
Yeah.
executor, the heirs. And so understanding that before you start trying to decipher each letter and each word can help to bring the right words to mind. So the signature is going to be a clue.
I love signatures. I could just stare at them all day.
Now, this is another example of a document from a probate file. This is a probate inventory. And what that is whenever there is an estate that's left behind, they had to put a value on it in order to distribute the property or the money to the heirs and to pay off the debts. So every item in that person's estate is listed and appraised. So if we look at this document, we know we're going to get a bunch of things. That
Mhm.
could help, again, to bring to mind what we're looking at. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you how, even though this is difficult handwriting because it's secretary hand, it was easy to pick out the word ground.
Mhm.
It looks just like it would look today, I think.
Today. Yeah.
So that's the first step. And then I try to pull out examples of each of these letters. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you why. Even though I can pick out the word ground really easily, why would I tell you to take examples of each one of these letters if you can read them already? Well,
Right. Right.
right? The reason is that we read in two different ways. We read phonetically, sound
Yeah.
by sound, but we also read in whole words. So the context of all the letters together tells us what the word says, even if we can't read one of the letters very well. It
Yes.
registers automatically. But if we take the individual letters and we look at the R in the word ground, a lot of times an R in secretary hand looks like an X.
Yes.
And as you can see in here, I circled some of the X's on the document, but they're not really X's, they're
There
R's.
are.
So by identifying what you can actually read, sometimes it can help you to decipher other things that may be harder to figure out.
How did this person write this letter?
Right, exactly. Because
Love
somebody
it.
else may write it very differently.
Mhm. Two ground. These, oh my gosh, these are so cool. Oh, I love this so much.
So this is an example of one of my alphabet guides that I created right out of the document. And what I like to do is I take a digital picture. Either I scan the document or I download it if it's already digitized. And then I take screenshots of any letter
Yeah.
I recognize. So I drag those right into a Word document. This is just a Word document. You can do it in a photo editing program or anything like that, but I just use Word. If you're not comfortable with digitizing and screenshots, you can also make physical copies of the document and just cut them up. Cut up the letters and put them
Oh, yeah.
and make a physical guide. But once you have this, then as you go through the document, you can look up these letters and figure out what it says.
With these S's, like, really? Are those S's? Are you kidding
Those
me?
are really S's. And a lot of times S's just look like slash marks.
Wow. And the
Yeah.
I is like, so S, which is really like all of this stuff going on. It's just like,
Yeah.
but then I, which is just like, and it's like all of this stuff going on.
Right.
What are
You
they
know,
doing?
every writer was different, and some of them thought that they should really be fancy and embellish everything, and sometimes that gets really confusing, which is why I take lots of different examples. And because, there's the capital letter and the lowercase letter, and they often look different.
Oh, yes, capital and lower. This P with your question marks, I'm like, that's an L. Come on now.
It actually turned out to be a P.
But so wait a minute, that looks like a double L. The fourth one is a
Uh-huh.
double L, a single L in secretary or something?
No, it's just the way this person wrote it. There's something
Okay.
really about this writer, and that's the power
The-
of doing this,
Okay.
using that individual's writing, because you'll start to see it throughout the document, and it's weird, and we would never see anybody else do it.
So this is great. I love this. Are there books that you could recommend to help people with reading handwriting?
Absolutely. So in the handout, I've got several books that can really be helpful.
Can you mention a couple?
Oh boy,
Oh,
no.
I think it's Kip Sperry is one of them. Would you recommend Kip Sperry?
Nip Sperry is wonderful.
Okay, good. So
He's
Kip
got
Sperry,
a
check it out.
number of very helpful books. Yeah.
Yes, yes. There are a lot of them out there. There are a
Yeah.
lot of them out there. So let's see what you have next. Okay.
So this is a letter that was written on behalf of Thomas Hayman, who had served the British Crown in the army for decades. And all of a sudden, I don't know what was going on with this paymaster, but he stopped paying. Maybe he was
Oh,
found of his liquor. Maybe I don't know what was going on, but this poor guy had lost limbs in service to his
oh,
country, and they weren't paying him. So
oh my God.
I know, this poor guy. So finally, the army figured this out, and they got rid of the paymaster and they brought in someone new. And so this letter was written on Thomas's behalf saying, hey, the poor guy hasn't got one red shirt. You've got to pay him.
My goodness.
So,
Wow.
and this is an example of mostly this is written in italican cursive, but some of
Did I
it
make this
a little.
bigger? Oh, yeah.
No, there we go. So here's an example of one line, and I figured out what it said, but there was this word that looked to me like conference. And
Mhm.
I really didn't have a question about that until I read the full line, which said, "We may not, with good conscience,
Ah.
be silent."
Mm.
And that didn't make sense to me. We may not, with good conscience, be silent. So the context of the whole sentence, just like the context of the letters can help us figure out the word, the context of the whole sentence can help us figure out words that we might not be able to read or might get wrong, because really this is the word conscience. We may not, with good conscience, be silent.
Ah,
Makes a whole lot more sense, right?
hugely. You did put a lot of resources in here, Pam. I am going to get them onto to Facebook so that people can see them. I
Great.
mean, you really gave us a lot of stuff to look at. Is there another slide?
There's one more.
Yeah. Ah, there we go.
And that is reach out for help. I can't tell you, sometimes my mind will just lock into something. I'll think it's something. I'll know it's wrong, but I can't stop seeing it. And sometimes the
Yes.
only way to get around it is to ask somebody else. And maybe they have better skills than me, or maybe they just see it anew, but
Yes.
that is the solution to a lot of my problems in
Reach
life.
out for help. And Facebook is a great place to go as well and put stuff
Right.
up. People love to help other people decipher what they're looking at.
That's right.
So I think that I did a big mistake. Let me see. I did not read the steps for Jim and Michael's quick start. So I am going to first read Pam's steps, then I'll do Jim and Michael's. Pam, this was fabulous. Each time I hear you, I learn something. So thank you. Let's go through your steps for deciphering old handwriting. Step 1, choose a document. Step 2, scan documents for context. Step 3, look for a word that is recognizable. Step 4, create an alphabet guide. That's the funnest part. Alphabet guide using the document. Step 5, use the context of the document to decipher difficult words. And step 6, reach out and touch someone. No, reach out to others for help. Thank you, Pam. And let's just quickly look at these steps for Jim and Michael's. You found a record, but is it your person? What does the record say about the person in it? Step 2, could there be more than one person in that place in that time with the same name? Of course, we all want to say, heck yeah. Step 3, summarize what's already known about your target person. Step 4 is to check for consistency between the two. And step 5 is to document your findings. So you don't have to keep doing this again and again. You could just refer back to your report on your same names. Pam, thank you.
Oh, thank you
Jim
for having
Beidler still here. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. Have a great time figuring out those same names, and also have a great time figuring out that secretary hand. I can't wait to say, was it secretary or Pelican? Yes, Jim? Oh, that was just a Jim clearing his throat. All right, let's get out of here. Thank you very much.